Hey guys, welcome back to another video, and today I'm going to be teaching you guys how I draw portraits. Not how to draw portraits, but how I do it and how I do it without tracing. I just want to talk a little bit about tracing because I know it's something that a lot of people think of as like a taboo, right, in the art world. Like if you trace, you're not a true artist, or you're not doing it correctly. And I just want you guys to understand, like, that's not the case. And a lot of professional artists trace. And they trace for a lot of different reasons, right? Because drawing or art is not just about the figuring out stage, which is the drawing stage, right? The beginning stage of the drawing. A lot of people want to focus a lot more on other things. So a lot of times people don't, want to take the time to draw. So what they end up doing is tracing. So, for example, a lot of tattoo artists do this. They're not there in their skin trying to figure out how the drawing should look like. What they do is they end up tracing it because it's a part of the process that they just don't want to get wrong, or they just don't want to spend time on. So they want to focus more on the shading part, the coloring part, the actual tattooing, and not having to think, right, when you're drawing. Tattoo artists do this, a lot of designers do this. So it's not a bad thing to do, right? Obviously, it's not something you want to rely on. You still want to have the skill to be able to figure out the drawing, but it's not something to be ashamed of in any way. So today I'm just gonna be teaching you guys how I draw portraits without having to trace. I used to trace all the time, especially when I draw portraits, because me personally, I don't like drawing the beginning stages, because it gives me a headache. And I know a lot of people struggle with it, like trying to figure out where the eyes are, where all of this is. A lot of people have a lot of fun doing it. I didn't, so I traced a lot. But it got to a point where I'm like, yeah, I just need to get the skill to be able to draw properly. So yeah, I just completely abandoned that. But I just wanted to let you guys know that it's completely okay if you do it, but having the skill to be able to draw portraits yourself without any help, or just figuring it out yourself, is a great merit to have, and to be proud of it as an artist, because it shows that you actually spent the time to learn the skill and practice and put in the hours. So the first thing, if you want to be good at that, you obviously have to put in the hours and do this for a long time. But I'm just going to give you guys my thought process when it comes to drawing portraits. So today I'm going to be drawing Will Smith. And the first thing that I do whenever I draw a portrait is I try to simplify everything. That is the most important thing in this beginning stages. You don't want to be sucked into the details right away. So you want to simplify everything, right? You want to establish the bigger picture. How tall is it, right, compared to how long it is. Obviously, the skill comes with, to be better at this, or to be good at this, it comes with time. And as the drawing goes on, you will obviously see your mistakes, and you'll try to correct them as you're going. But that's the first thing that I do, is I try to figure out everything, right? Where is the eyes gonna be? How is the eyes? How far is it from each other, right? I look at the reference and I try to figure out more or less how far it is from each other. Another thing is, like, for example, how far is the left eye here, like the left corner of the eye here, how far is it to like the back here of the head? Stuff like this, right? Or how far is this eye compared to the nose, right? As you can see, for example, here, I feel like the nose might have been a bit too big, like I structured it a bit too much there. So yeah, little stuff like this is what I keep in mind. For example, how high is the forehead? As you might notice, I feel like the eyes in comparison to like the top of the head is pretty high, right? So one thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna put that a bit lower. And I do this a lot. I erase so much. I feel like, me personally, I depend on erasing so much that I don't think I'll be able to do a good drawing without having to erase. So as you can see, that I made a mistake. It's okay. I put the eyes, the eye level a bit too high, and I just want to like start to establish like the hairline, and how far is that to the eyes, where's the bottom of the nose gonna be, and how is that for example the mouth, where's that gonna be. So I'm thinking overall it's a bit bigger, like longer, the face. So I'm gonna try to readjust that. I'm not into detailing yet. I'm just loosely placing the overall picture. Now in this stage of the drawing, you can go as detailed as you want. There are a lot of people who draw so many guidelines to make sure that they get every single part of the drawing correct. I don't go that deeply into it because I rather not spend too much time on it. I mostly go by eye, you know, and trying to figure things out just by the feel of it. And to be honest, I don't always want to be like super perfect either, because yeah, it's like I don't, as long as it kind of looks like the character that I'm drawing, and nobody actually sees anything wrong with it in any way, like just a slight, just maybe just a little bit of an imperfection, I'm perfectly okay with it, you know, as long as it's perfectly recognizable and there's no mistaking who the person is. I'm okay with it. Now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna place where the eyes are gonna be, and one thing that I'm trying to keep in mind is the distance between this eye and then here, the back of the head. I'm trying to respect this space as much as I can. And another thing that you also want to keep in mind is like the direction of the face. Where's the center of the face? I always do a center line whenever I draw, and also a level of the eyes, right? Where's the eye gonna be? And also how tilted is the eye, right? For example, this eye is a bit lower than this one. And this is, for the most part, this is mostly what I do when it comes to the structuring. Again, depends on you how deeply you want to go into this, and there are a lot of people who have a lot of different methods on how they structure this. For example, some people, they block out the shadows first, right, to have a sort of general idea of how the entire thing is going to be, and then from there you get into the details little by little. That's completely up to you, but I personally, I just go very simple. Just gives me an overall idea of how the entire thing is going to look like, and then what I do from here is just get straight into the details. Now in this stage of the process, I don't like press a whole lot, like in terms of like the pencil, because it's still a very erasable process, because I'm still figuring out everything. And the more you get into the drawing, the more you'll see your mistakes. And most of the times whenever I draw, you know, it's not like the final thing, the first thing that I draw, so I end up erasing so much, and it's okay. But I just want to have a loose method to it here, and not have anything final yet. What I do is I draw this eye first. I don't go into like a detail like the folds of the eye here, not yet. And then I go all the way to the other eye, and then if I see something is wrong or off in comparison to the reference, like maybe the eye's distance is not correct, what I do is I go back to it, try to readjust it, and then when I feel like it's pretty good, the distance and everything, I just get into the details and hash it out. Again, like this is just you know, figuring it out type thing, and just have fun with it, you know. In the beginning, I used to really hate this part of the process, because I was always frustrated with how my drawings turned out. They were never good, and I just hated how it is. So I got to a point where I'm like, yeah, I'm just gonna trace, right? And a lot of people do it because they're just not the best at this part, which is okay. But now I feel like, I don't know, I feel like I've gotten to a point where I'm not as frustrated anymore. Obviously, there are times where I get frustrated with my drawings and things are just not looking good, but you just have to be patient, right? It's been a very long time since I've been so frustrated with my drawing that I completely abandoned it. Now I don't really have that luxury. I end up just finishing the drawing either way, even if it doesn't look good, because I'm kind of forced in a way, and I feel like that should be something a lot of people should be more should do more, which is just force yourself to finish it. It doesn't matter if it doesn't look good. And what ends up happening, I've uploaded videos of drawings that end up being horrible. It happens. Some days you might be just tired or you're just not feeling it. It's okay. Just try to finish your drawings, even if it doesn't look completely how you want it, because that forces you to, to execute, right? And not be a quitter. Because what ends up happening, if you do quit, most of the time you just end up quitting most of your drawings and you will never finish a drawing. And that's not something that you wanna do. So yeah. What I'm thinking about right now is like the size of the iris is pretty small, right? As you may notice in the reference, and in comparison to the eye size, it wasn't completely right. So what I'm doing is I'm reducing the size of the eye to fit the size of the iris from what I see in the reference. Because if I were to fit the iris with the size that I drew earlier, it would not look right. This kind of thing that I do, I readjust things compared to other things that I draw, and then just keep readjusting and readjusting. So the eye was a bit bigger than it should, because the iris in the reference was a little small. And now this is not perfect, right? I'm probably still gonna go back at it and try to readjust it, but what you want to do is just not focus on one thing and try your best to draw everything at once, right? I'll still get back to that, but I just want to like draw this part and see if it's okay, and then just keep going back and forth until the overall picture is good. Now a lot of people would suggest would be, okay, you drew the first part of the eye, even if it's not perfect, just go to the nose, go to the mouth, everything is imperfect, it's okay, just draw everything first, and then you just go back, little by little. But what I like to do is I like to have things semi-final in terms of like positioning, for example, in the eyes first, and then go to the rest of the features and kind of readjust it compared to the first eye, because I want to spend time on the eye, and then once I know that's like a good proportion, good placement, all of that, everything will kind of fall into place in a way. Obviously it's not gonna be like completely perfect, but that's how I do this. It's worked for me, so that's how I've always done it. So let's go to the lower eyelids here. Now Will Smith is very known for like his lower eyelid. I would say it's like one of these prominent features. So whenever I draw somebody, is I tend to analyze what is it that makes the person, like what features are they most known for. His lower eyelids, like whenever he squints or something, like he has very thick lower eyelids. So it's something that I try to fish out whenever I draw somebody. So if you're drawing a caricature, for example, you want to emphasize the most prominent features of the person. So that's what I do a lot of times, and I think that's how a lot of caricature artists draw. And the more you do it, the better you get at it, of course. So, but it always comes down to that, right? To the first part, which is what are the prominent features? And once you're good at analyzing that, you can then go ahead and develop the skill of caricature or whatever it is that you want to you want to achieve, right? Now, as you can see, I made the eyes a bit smaller than I was planning originally. So what ends up happening is that everything else kind of like shrinks with it. So for example, as you can notice, the left eye here, in comparison to like the edge of the face, is not as long as how I did it originally. So what I do is I kind of readjust, right? Because the general guideline that I draw in the beginning is usually not the final, right? It's not the final proportions or anything like that. So I always readjust as I'm drawing. And one thing that I feel like, for example, right, this eye is not high enough, because I'm noticing like it is, I don't know, I feel like this eye is not completely right. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna redo it, and it's okay, it's completely okay. I feel like one important part to being a good artist is to not being okay with redrawing things. Because what a lot of people do is like they're like, oh gosh, I already drew this and there's a lot of detail and I just don't want to redraw this. And if that's you, it's gonna be tough, right? It's gonna be tough to do things right. I think it's okay to know when to redraw your features. Okay, so I think now we're in a good place to move forward. What I'm doing, for example, is trying to block out the shading part of the drawing, just to have a general idea of the structure of the face. So I'm trying to block out like the darker sides of the drawing, because for example there's a lot of shading here in the nose. So what I'm going to do is I'm trying to block that out in a way. I think it's also important to be really sensitive to shading and just contrast and values as well, so it's easy to kind of block them out. Now, one thing that I'm keeping in mind when I'm drawing the nose is like, how far left is the nose in comparison to this part of the eye, right? As you can see, the nose starts right about underneath it, right? And it's not too far down, so it's right about here. I mean, normally what we do is we tend to go a bit further down because we think maybe it's too close or too far. But I think it's just trying to be sensitive to spatial awareness, and know how far things are from each other. Because if I didn't think about this, I would have drawn this a lot lower and things would be a bit off. This is what happens when there's a lot of wrong things happening in the drawing and you don't know where the wrong thing is we don't really keep in mind these sort of things. And same thing here on the other side. Now, one very, very prominent feature of Will Smith is obviously his cheekbones. Whenever he smiles, as you can notice. So that's another thing you want to like emphasize. Okay, there you go. So one thing that you may notice is that, for example, the mouth that we drew earlier is not in tune with what we've been drawing so far, because the mouth is a lot closer to the nose than we originally drew it. So we're just gonna make it a bit higher. So one thing that I'm doing here is, as you can see, I'm readjusting the shape of the face in comparison to the mouth, for example, because I'm noticing, for example, how far is the bottom of the mouth to the edge of the face. And to be honest, it's pretty low. Like there's not a lot of distance. Now, I might be wrong and I might have drawn the mouth a bit too further to the right, which could happen. But as you're drawing, you'll just figure these things out and you just keep erasing and keep figuring things out. But what you want to do is always draw things. You always want to compare, right? Proportions, how far things are from each other, and that's what I keep doing when I'm drawing. Now, teeth is something a lot of people struggle with, especially to make it look natural. What I do is I just draw like a general shape of the teeth. Obviously, I start drawing the lines and how I want the teeth to be. And then once I do all this, I just go back to it and just try to, define it, try to make them look natural. because what a lot of people do is just draw blocks. And I understand it's hard to draw teeth. All right, so I'm pretty much done here with the mouth. So what I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna draw the little goatee here that he has. And as mentioned before, you know, you wanna, if this is something that's very distinguishable of the character, you want to emphasize that. So his goatee is very, very recognizable, as you know, because it's Will Smith's look to have that. So obviously you want to draw that, and if possible, emphasize it as much as you can. Now, one thing that you want to do as you're going is trying to block out the shading, because I think the shading is one of the most important things, because every little curve that the drawing has in terms of volume is what makes the character, the person. So for example, the little curves in the eyes, every little thing, right, that has a shading and a light is what makes the actual character. For example, the curve here in between the eyes, right, and here there's a little bit more shade here, like just a bit more darker than everywhere else, and there's a bit of a volume here at the top of the eyelid here, and there's a bit of a shading here. Like, all of those little details is what makes the person. So as you're drawing, yeah, it's okay to go straight to the line work and try to figure out the eyes, the nose, but as you're going, you want to, you know, keep in mind all of the little shades that makes the character. All right, I feel like we've figured out the most important features. From here, obviously, you can go back and try to define things, like maybe the teeth are not exactly how it should be. Just go back at it, try to define things. Maybe the eyes is just a little bit off, or whatever it may be. Now, obviously, you can go back as much as you want, spend as much time as you want doing this. Depending on how much experience you have drawing, obviously will depend on how often you go back at it. But just to give you guys an idea, like, I've been drawing pretty much all my life and I constantly go back non-stop. So I'm sure there are a lot of artists out there who struggle less in terms of, like, you know, not having to erase as much, because they've done this so many times, to the point where, you know, they don't even need to think about it. I'm not one of those people. Even if it doesn't turn out right, I feel like the most important thing is just to finish it and just move on, right? And just keep going at it, and then the next drawing, just try to make it as best as better than the previous one. But I'm just gonna go straight to the rest of the features now. For example, I'm trying to figure out where is the ear gonna start in comparison to the eye. It's a little bit higher than the eye, so not too far. Now, this is not a video about shading or cross hatching or anything like that. If you do want me to make a video about that, let me know. But yeah, I'm just trying to teach you guys how I go about making the proportions right for the drawings. I'm not gonna get too into like shading and all this in this video. Let's draw the hairline here, and as you can see, it's pretty far up compared to where the eyebrows are. Now, for example, here the hairline kind of curves not too high up. I was doing it very high, so it curves right about there roughly. So there, and then that means the hairline starts about there. It's not as high as I originally thought. So yeah, these are the decisions that I make, and as you can notice, they make a huge difference in terms of how I place everything, because you can only go so far just by eye, right? Yeah, you can kind of eyeball where things should go, but we're humans and we're never perfect. Yeah, I made everything just a tad bit bigger than it should be. Now, I would say contrast is probably one of the most important things as well when it comes to drawing. So if you want to go back at it and add a bit more kind of darkness to everything, I think that would be best. But yeah, I'm just gonna go with the minimum amount of contrast here, just for the sake of the tutorial. I would say the more you get into the nitty-gritty when it comes to shading and contrast, the more it looks like the person. So if you want to like have a lot more precision when it comes to the contrast and shading, that would be best. But for the sake of the tutorial, I'm just gonna go very light with it and just make it more of a sketchy type drawing. And yeah, we're pretty much done with the main features. Now the clothes, obviously, it doesn't have to be completely perfect, and this part you can you can give yourself a little bit of freedom to make things imperfect, because clothes are clothes and it doesn't really matter if things don't look exactly. But we are done with mostly like the most important parts of the drawing. Now, is it perfect? Absolutely not. Now, is it recognizable as Will Smith? 100%. Obviously, if I spend a lot more time with the shading, I think the shading again is a very big part of it. But this tutorial is just to help you understand how I place all of the features and how I make it look like the person. And there you go. I am pretty much done with this. Now, as you can see, I wasn't as careful with the clothing because clothings are clothes, you know, they don't have to be perfect. But if you want to like make every detail perfect, that's completely up to you. You can go ahead and make it look as much as you want to the actual reference, obviously. But this is kind of my thought process whenever I draw. It's not just with portraits. I mostly take most of my time with the face, obviously, the features, how to place the eyes, the nose. All this is the most important thing. And of course, I'm also trying to stylize this, so I'm kind of doing it like a messy sort of process here at the edges, just to make it look more like a sketch. So, but there you go. Hopefully you enjoyed. And this is the process of how I normally draw a portrait without tracing. And of course, if you guys have any questions you want me to answer, definitely leave them down in the comments below and I'll check it out. But hopefully you guys enjoyed, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye bye.